Hi, everyone. I hope you're doing well. I am back for a short solo episode. I was inspired to jump on and talk today about the idea of permission, and I'm going to try something new and leave you with a challenge at the end of the episode. So more to come on that. So this concept of permission has been coming up a lot for me lately on podcasts I'm listening to or articles I'm reading. On the podcast here with guests, you might have picked up on this. And then also in a recent interview I did with a close friend and mentor. So, for example, one of the podcasts that I listen to is with Jenny Blake. She has one of her podcasts is called Free Time. And at the end of each episode, she asks her guests if you could give permission to people or write people a permission slip, what would you tell them? And it's been really interesting to hear what her guests have to share. So that's the first one. And then I came across an interview with Adam Grant last month talking about giving ourselves permission to play as an antidote for languishing. So for those of us who might be still struggling with a little bit of languishing hangover from the pandemic, he really champions give yourself permission to play. And then it came up with Christopher Carter on episode number 29. And of course, we were talking about his book, which includes permission in the title. It's called Permission to Glow, A Spiritual Guide to Epic Leadership. And we talked about his 4 permissions framework. And then I'll just mention 2 of the permissions. The first one is permission to glow in the dark. And then the second is permission to glow in the light. And if I were to translate those in my words, the first is really about giving yourself permission to shine despite the fear you might be facing. So that being in the dark. And then the other is the permission to shine and let other people shine too. So permission to glow in the light that you're getting from other people. So Casey's work is all about this permissions kind of theme. And then it came up again in episode number 32 with Katie Cicerini. And without prompting, she talked about this. She works with leaders and she says that how often it comes up that leaders make assumptions that get in the way of themselves being able to be human with people they're working with and being able to move forward and have powerful conversations. And in her role as a coach, she often finds she's often playing this role of giving them permission to act. And she encouragingly says, permission granted. Yes, you can say that. Yes, you can do that. And ultimately, in working with her coaching clients who are looking to up their game, she's giving them permission to unlock their full potential as leaders. And then I was interviewing a former boss and now friend and mentor. And I was asking him how he sustained himself throughout his career. And on reflection, one of the things he shared was about how he made things easier on himself because he gave himself permission to work hard and not feel bad about it. So let me give you a little bit more context on that. So he said, if he happened on a weekend, for example, to just choose to work on something and invest that time, even though it was on the weekend, he didn't make himself feel bad about it because he gave himself permission to go and do that work. He enjoyed the work. He wanted to invest the time to do a good job. And so instead of feeling bad about it, because that's what often society does to some of us hard workers, it says you're a workaholic. You shouldn't be working that much. But in this case, he said it would do him more harm if he made himself feel bad about it. So he just gave himself permission to do that. And when I heard that story, for me, it really was about this idea of allowing ourselves to be who we are and to not apologize for it. So with all this permission coming up, I went and I looked up the definition. What is permission? It's such a weird word to me. And I wasn't really satisfied with the definition, to be honest. So it says it's about consent or authorization. So consent is permission for something to happen or agreement to do something. And then authorization is to give approval. And then I just kind of remember it as getting permission slips signed when I was growing up. And it's interesting because as I reflect on this now, it's popping up to me that this line of thinking or this definition reminded me that back on episode number 6 with Philip Van Dusen, he talked about oftentimes in the workplace, and his counsel was sometimes don't ask for permission, ask for forgiveness, right? We've all heard that adage of you shouldn't always be asking for permission. Go ahead and don't ask for permission and ask for forgiveness. And in that case, or even in that example, it's almost you're giving permission to yourself to act without having to go to authority figures and get that permission, if you will. So permission to me, even in thinking about those definitions, it brings to mind a controlling mechanism, a who or what that might be holding us back from doing something. So what if we were first to take back that control and not seek permission from outside ourselves, as Philip was suggesting that we do? And then what if we were to unleash that mechanism that is keeping us from going past go? What if we were to unleash ourselves and give ourselves permission, as many of the examples I shared suggest? So here's where the challenge comes in. I'll leave you with this as a challenge for this week. What permission do you want to grant yourself? And then I'll layer on this component if it provides a little more focus. I was talking with another mentor this past week, and it came up that sustainable ambition for me is about asking the question, how can I sustain myself while stretching myself? So with that as inspiration, perhaps think about what permission might you grant yourself to stretch yourself? That's that ambition side. And then what permission might you grant yourself to sustain yourself? And that's that sustainable side. So again, think about what permission might you grant yourself to stretch yourself? And then what permission might you grant yourself to sustain yourself? And then respond, as Katie so encouragingly said in our interview, permission granted, and move forward and get into action. So that's your challenge for this week. And reach out and let me know how it goes. You can send me an email at podcast@sustainableambition.com. Or send me an email if you have a listener question you'd like me to address or want to send on some feedback. And if you're enjoying the podcast, I'd be so grateful if you would rate, review, and share it with others. That really helps for it to get known out there and be helpful for other people in the world. And I'd be so grateful. Thank you so much. And with that, thanks for listening. And until next time, be well. Find more inspiring interviews and get show notes for this episode at sustainableambition.com/podcast. Make sure you don't miss an episode or my insider tips, guides, and tools by signing up for Sustainable Ambition Forum, my twice monthly newsletter. Sign up at sustainableambition.com/subscribe. Thanks again for joining me. Speak with you next time.